How are you?
Hey, I'm in Jay Skelly's spot. You're in a problem maker spot. Who are you?
I will.
What, you want the password? No, I got it, but I want the sign is not lit up. Did you try this one?
Are we live now?
7213. 5511. Okay. All right. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Can you hear Nick?
We heard Nick.
Okay, good. I'll get this meeting started. First of all, Ally, would you, when you're ready, take roll call?
Craig
You're on mute, Dave.
I'm all right.
Okay,
No, I can hear him, right?
yeah, but I can see him blocked out.
We're all set. We're all set, Nick.
Okay,
Go ahead, Ally.
Craig Leggett,
Here.
Michael Biddle,
Yes, ma'am.
Brian Campbell,
Yes.
Mike Wild,
Present.
Chuck Barton,
Here.
Deanne Bruno,
Here.
Nick Caimano,
here,
Dave O'Brien.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. First order of business is approval of minutes of the May 16th, 2022 IDA board meeting. Would someone make a motion? Moved by Mr. Biddle. Have a second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
aye,
Opposed? It's all, isn't it? It's all funny, isn't it, Brian? So I would like Mr. Biddle to come up front. No.
Not where.
No.
Yeah.
He's got to leave early, so.
Yeah, way back.
Can one of you turn around your computer so you can see you can see up here?
You're both the. Oh, boy.
Okay. Can you get us? You can come over here, please.
Me?
Yes, you.
In the view.
So Mr. Biddle has been associated with the IDA for many, many years. If I told you how many, you wouldn't believe me because he doesn't look this old. But anyhow, over the years, especially with grants and grant applications, he's been very helpful in getting us almost $2 million in grants. And that was contributions of being the chair for a while and coming back on the board. He was secretary treasurer, he was CFO or CEO.
I think both.
For both?
Yes.
At one time. So I thought that appropriate with all the years he put in it to give him a plaque to honor his service as he leaves us and moves to someplace outside of the cold weather. And I'd like to read the plaque. The plaque says WWIDA in honor of Michael Biddle. Thank you for your contributions to Warren County and Washington County through your service on the Joint County Industrial Development Agency. So thank you, Michael,
Thank you,
and I appreciate your efforts.
Chairman. Thank you so much.
I wish you
Thank
luck in the future.
Look how nice they did the idea. Thank you.
Is that on Granville Slate?
It is on, yes.
Yes.
Dave, you're gonna have to slip him $50 because if he's gonna, move that to his new location, it's gonna cost a lot of money, because that weighs probably 2-3.
Holy moly, that is heavy.
Pounds, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Mike.
Chairman. Thanks for, thank you, everybody, for allowing me to be part of the team. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Michael.
So look, he's got, he can even carry it. Look at that.
So moving on, tonight we have with us Josh Bagnato from CHPE, the Champlain Hudson Power Express. And I asked to come on board, just gives an update where they're at, what the construction plans are, just an overall plan on where they're at and what they're doing. So I don't know if everyone knows Josh. There's a couple new faces here since we talked to him. But Josh has been working on this with TDI and CHPE for, what's it been, 12 years now, Josh?
Not me personally, Dave, but yes, the project has been started about that time ago. But yeah, it's been a long road.
So Josh, I appreciate you giving us an overview of where we're at. Then I'll open up for questions.
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think I've been in that room before. It's probably about a year ago. So some of you I probably would recognize if I could see a little bit better. And thanks, Dave, for letting me chat here this afternoon. So for those who don't know me, my name's Josh. Can you hear me okay? I'll start there.
Yes.
Okay, great. So my name's Josh Bagnato, the Vice President of Development for TDI. TDI is the company that's behind the Champlain Hudson Power Express, which is the 339-mile buried HVDC line from the Canadian border to Astoria, Queens, New York City. So as Dave said, the project's been under development for about 10 years. It's quite a challenge to get a project permitted and constructed of that length and ambition, but it's when it's constructed and operational, it's going to be quite a game changer for bringing renewable energy into New York City. As you know, the project goes through Washington County, both in Lake Champlain and then on land, starting in Putnam Station, where it goes through Putnam out onto Route 22 into the village of Whitehall, where it gets onto the CP right away, and then basically stays within the CP right away all the way to Fort Edward. So I've made a lot of friends and acquaintances in Washington County over the last 3 or 4 years. I've kind of led the outreach in your county. I have colleagues who work on the portions more south of me. And then more recently, we've obviously negotiated a pilot agreement with the Washington Warren IDA, which we were happy to close on in March of this year. So that's kind of the project. That's who I am. That's sort of our interaction with Washington. We've had a fair amount of interaction outside of the county and the IDA. Gotten to know Deb Donahue over at the county DPW, some of the supervisors quite well. And we've done some outreach Zoom calls in the past. Actually we did one, last month, I think, trying to let folks in the county know what we intend to do. So what we're doing is we do intend to start construction within Washington County for the project. It's not going to be linear construction, so we're not going to start in the north and then just work our way all the way south. We'll have crews working in different areas at different times. We have 2 main contractors, one that's going to be building the upland portion of the project and one that's going to be building the water portion of the project. So in York County, there will be 2 contractors that will be on the ground. So where we are with the project in Washington County is where we have filed an environmental management and construction plan. That's also known as EM&CP. For those who know New York regulatory bodies, you need to file those. You get your permit, and then you need to file those prior to starting construction. So the Public Service Commission will review it and approve it. An EM&CP filing is comprised of detailed design, plan, and profile, as well as a lot of narrative, which describes how you're going to build the project in a given location. So we submitted that on April 15th to the state, and we've received comments back from some of the state agencies, and we're in the process of responding to those comments. We're hopeful that the Public Service Commission can make a decision on that segment, maybe in August. To be clear, that segment that we filed is from Putnam Station on land to basically the CP right away in the village of Whitehall. So you can't do any construction until that EM&CP is approved. The other thing that we're working on, which is equally important, is financing the project. We're owned by Blackstone, which is a private equity firm based in New York City. They will do a financial close in order to secure the debt they need to construct the project. The key to us getting to a financial close is behind us, and that was our partner Hydro-Quebec being awarded a contract by the state, by NYSERDA. So that contract was signed, and it was approved by the Public Service Commission in April. So that's the biggest thing that you need in order to finance a project of this scale. And so we hope to have a financial close later this summer, with the construction beginning later summer or fall. I don't have a specific construction start date. There are some still things that are moving around, but we're all motivated to get construction started And we'll obviously let the towns know well in advance of when machines start rolling in. So hopefully, Dave, that's enough of an update without providing too much of one and cutting into your meeting time too much. But happy to answer questions from anybody. And thanks for having me.
Questions for Josh? Mr. Bill?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Josh, thanks for being here today. We really appreciate the partnership and all the great work that you've done alongside the chairman here and other our taxing entities throughout your future construction site. You said there's still an approval at EMTP. What's the timeline on that, the anticipation, Josh?
Yeah, so we're hoping that it can get on an agenda at the August meeting. The PSC meets, as you may know, once a month, generally in the middle of the month. So we're hoping that can get lined up for mid-August. We have comments back from the agencies, so we're working on responding to those. So I think it's that's reasonable to hope that it'll get the decision will be made out in August. If not, that'll move to the September meeting, we would hope.
Mr. Chairman, may I follow up?
You may.
Josh, do you need any further support letters from the chamber, from the county, from businesses or anything like that to help support this moving forward?
Well, that is a very kind offer. I would say the support we got from the county, from individuals, from supervisors during the PSC approval process was incredibly helpful. We had the outpouring of support and the majority of support for this project across the state was humbling for us. A lot of that came from this county, and we appreciate it. I think at this moment, it never hurts to send a note to someone. But really, I think you've you provided the support at the most important time. I think, frankly, from my perspective, what's most helpful for me is to understand if there's any concerns coming from towns or counties or individuals. We really try to be proactive and communicate and let people know what we're doing. If you feel like we've fallen short anywhere, that kind of feedback is really helpful. But in terms of outward support, I think you provided it at the time we most needed it, which is when it was going through the Public Service Commission process. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or thoughts? Brian?
Josh, it's hard to get to an actual date, but is there a no later than date to when this will be started, or is that too far out?
I'm going to say fall is when we're targeting, and I'm going to leave it at that. I just, what I don't want to do is give you a no later than it changes. But, if you guys have seen the amount of survey crews we've had out there, if you look at this EM&CP filing that we submitted, you can see we're very serious about getting construction started. So I think that's where I'd like to leave it at that. And of course, when we have a date, we will provide it to the county and let you guys know. Obviously, we have obligations both in our permit and just because it's the right thing to do to give the county and the towns fair warning. As you guys know, and folks on the phone know, most of the impacts are in DOT Route 22, Putnam. So we're really coordinating with Putnam. The next segment, which is going to go from the village of Whitehall to Fort Edward, roughly, that is when we intend to file next. That EM&CP will hopefully go in the month of July. And then we'll continue to submit segments of EM&CP in roughly 20 to 40 mile increments as we move down the line. So that's the timing, and that's the next big filing for us is that next segment in Washington County, Southern Washington County.
So Josh, in terms of construction, are you gonna be working through the winter months, or is that, I'm just sort of trying, someone asked me that question, I didn't know the answer.
Yeah, so a lot of our, it's gonna depend a little bit, Dave, so we're gonna have certain restrictions based on where we are, whether we're in a railroad right away or a DOT right away. I think folks generally know that construction sequencing is the first year or season is most of the disturbance, where you're digging a trench, you're laying the conduit, and then you're restoring over it. And then the next segment, which is really a second segment, kind of a different contractor, you're coming in with the actual HVDC cable, you're pulling it through the conduit, you're splicing it at about 2,000 foot increments. And so that'll be the second phase. In the first EM&CP, we have two horizontal directional drills. We have one on Lake Road in Putnam to go under a stream there right before you get to 22. And then we have a second one, which is quite a bit more complicated, which is going under the South Bay between Dresden and Whitehall. So those will be of longer duration. And then when we get on the railroad, there are some horizontal directional drills along the railroad right away. I don't know exactly where those are offhand, but that's basically how the construction sequencing works. And whether we work in winter and how far into winter we go, there will definitely be some amount of construction. I think pretty much throughout the year once they get started. I know that there are some requirements as to when certain trees can be cleared based on restrictions for endangered bats. I see some folks shaking their heads, so they know about these restrictions. So there's a lot of windows we need to work around in the waterways, which is, I know, somewhat interesting to you guys. There's certain times we're allowed to be in Southern Lake Champlain doing construction. There's other times we're not allowed. So all of these factors are being put together by our contractors to come up with the schedule. So it's complicated, and I can't tell you exactly when we'll be there, Dave, but I think it's as much as we can work. For those of you who saw us, we were doing geotech. What was it, last year in the middle of the winter? I remember somebody called me and said, "Oh, we have to delay geotech in Washington County this week." I said, "Why?" And they said, "Oh, they just got 5 feet of snow." And I said, "There's no way they got 5 feet of snow." And you actually got 5 feet of snow. Probably don't have to remind you about that, but so we work in the winter for sure.
Okay, Chuck?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Josh, nice to meet you. I'm Chuck Barton. I'm one of the newbies on the board. Nice to meet you. Question for you, coming at this from a different angle. What is the probability the project will start by the end of September?
Greater than 50%, much greater than 50%, I would say.
Great, thank you. I know it's hard to pinpoint a time, but understanding that for September is helpful, so thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Leggett?
Thank you. Josh, can you give us a bigger picture on how this is all laying out, going down the whole Hudson Valley? You described well the Washington County Park.
Yep, sure. So we jump on the CP Railroad right away in Village of Whitehall. We are off of that CP right away for about 3.5 miles in Fort Anne, old Route 4, due to some challenges staying in the right of way there. And then we're basically on the CP right away all the way through Washington County, Saratoga, Schenectady, Albany, and Greene. There are some minor excursions outside of the right of way, probably about 15 miles within that roughly 120-mile stretch. That total upland route from Putnam Station to where we get into the Hudson River, which is in Catskill, New York, is 150 miles. So that's probably the most complicated, challenging part of the project, because you're building upland. From the Canadian border to Washington County, we're entirely in Lake Champlain. And then from Catskill, New York, we go into the Hudson River, where we install the cables in the Hudson River until we get to Rockland County. We come out of Rockland County, out of the Hudson River for about 9 miles in Rockland County to avoid a sensitive habitat there. And then we go back in the Hudson River, down the Harlem River, past Yankee Stadium. We pop up into Harlem River Yards, which is in Queens. Then we go into Randall's Island, which is in Manhattan. We go from Randall's Island under the East River into Astoria, Queens. And that's where the project terminates. So it is a incredibly challenging project to permit and design. But it's really the only way that, it's the most efficient, cost-effective, timely way to get a huge amount of renewable energy into New York City, which is a huge impetus by both the city and the state.
Thank you.
So roughly Washington County is 28% of the upland and 12.4% of the entire project mileage wise.
12.4%. Yeah, that sounds about right, Dave. Yep.
Yeah. It's really amazing how Washington County got blessed in terms of the benefits we'll reap out of this for a county that needs a big boost, and some of its towns that really need a big boost. It was really fortunate they were able to take that pilot agreement, split it into host benefit packages and into pilots to help some of these communities be a little more flexible what they can do with those monies. So thank you for accommodating us in that, and I think that was a great thing. But I know working through this has been frustrating on both our parts and some of the negotiations we had, and we had starts and stops, but we did work through it, and I think we were one of the first to close for the IDAs.
You were, Dave. You were, and I feel the same way. It was great working with the IDA, and hopefully we'll have a ribbon cutting up your neck of the woods soon. And just again, appreciate the support from the IDA, from the towns, from people, from the supervisors, et cetera. It really, really, really matters. And it makes my job a lot easier. We think it's a really great project. I wouldn't be working so hard on this project if I didn't truly believe in it and think it's going to be great for the state of New York. So appreciate the support, and I will keep you guys updated. I wish I had specific dates. When we get them, we'll provide them. And there's nobody who wants to get this project constructed sooner than we do, my company. So,
Yeah, because you got to start paying off Blackstone for all the investment they put into it. So.
yep. NYSERDA doesn't. There's no payments made from NYSERDA until the project is operational, until there's electricity flowing through it. So a lot of risk put on the developers here.
And you've got a drop dead date to finish this, don't you?
Yes, COD of 2025.
That 12/25 hasn't changed in the past, 7 or 8 months that I know, probably longer than that. So, well, thank you, Josh. I sent you the email. If you got any questions about that, let me know.
Yep, I will. Thank you all, and congratulations to the gentleman who got the plaque. $2 million in grants. That's pretty impressive. So congratulations, and I'll see you all soon. Happy to provide an update anytime you want.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Okay. Next on the agenda. Next on the agenda is accounts payable. I need a motion to accept the accounts payable as listed. So moved by Brian, second by Mr. Biddle. We'll let him have the final exiting second. Any questions?
Sun Valley Apartments. Is that total correct?
What, for the legal fees? That's the bill Kara sent us. And we are reimbursed for that.
Okay.
Okay.
Into that.
No, we're reimbursed in that. Kara, that's the correct number, isn't it? Yes, because that's the amount she collected from Sun Valley at closing.
It's what?
That amount's the amount she collected from Sun Valley at closing.
Okay.
Okay,
On Thursday, Sun Valley wired us, oh no, that was Scotty.
Scotty.
I believe Sun Valley, we received 58,000, okay,
Mhm.
thank you. So that covered everything.
Okay. Any other questions on the bills? Okay. Mike, you're gonna have to state a vote.
Sir, yes, sir.
Roll call vote, please.
Are there any other votes that need to be taken?
You seconded this, so you have to stay for the vote.
Okay, that's right.
Craig Leggett,
Yes. I was
Mike.
gonna hold off so that Mike could just stay here longer.
Oh. Thank you.
Michael Fiddle,
Yes, ma'am.
Brian Campbell,
Yes.
Mike Wild,
Yes.
Jeannie Sullivan. Yes. Chuck Barton,
Yes.
Dan Bruno,
Yes.
Nick Caimano,
Yes.
Dave O'Brien.
Yes. Thank you. Next item of business is executive director report.
Good afternoon, everybody. Since the last board meeting, it's been a very, very busy month. A lot of different events attended and a lot of meetings with various people with interest in doing business with the IDA. Some of the highlights was at the Glens Falls Downtown Revitalization announcement last week. Pretty amazing renderings. That's going to be quite a project. I was at the triple chamber mixer last Tuesday night at the Sagamore. Very well attended. Met with a local business up there in Bolton about possible expansion. I also toured the forum, the Lake George Forum, with Mr. Pencil to get an update on the project that we partnered with him. That's going to be very creative, very popular attraction once he's up and going. I was at the EDC luncheon last Friday afternoon, the Warren County EDC luncheon. As I mentioned, I've met with several developers over the course of the past couple of weeks to talk about various projects, which I'm happy to talk about offline if anybody has any questions. Some upcoming events, I'll be addressing the Glens Falls Rotary on Thursday. I have a meeting with a potential site next Thursday afternoon for our next economic development forum, following up on one we had in Salem for the fall. Couple of updates on our two parks, Canalside Energy. Thursday afternoon, I'll be meeting with Grasshopper out there to give them a set of keys to the gate and just answer any follow-up questions they may have. They plan on beginning, they're hopeful within about 4 weeks to start doing the brush maintenance. And the Airport Industrial Park, as was previously mentioned, Bucks County Biscotti closed on Thursday. So looking forward to getting that building up and running. And those are some of the highlights, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Excuse me if anybody has any.
Just to make the board aware, when Michael was out there today, he noticed that Biscotti started construction. They hadn't closed on the property. They were, from what I hear from people going by there, they started construction on a piece of property they didn't own 2 weeks ago. Just to make the board aware. There's probably really nothing much we can do about it, but I did want to make the board aware that they jumped the gun without any approvals from the IDA to do that. So I hope we don't get any I hope they don't get any liabilities out of that, but we'll see. Kara, got any comments on that?
I mean, they did not seek permission from us to request that to start site work prior to closing. You know, we'd had numerous discussions with them leading up to the closing. So it was a little shocking to hear that information. I mean, obviously, if we would permit that, we would have required insurance and indemnification agreement, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, the closing is technically we're waiting on signature pages of the documents to file everything. So we haven't filed the deed yet. Because we don't have their signature pages from them, though you do have the money for the purchase of the property.
I think that in the future, we're gonna have to have a big page. They have to sign that no construction or anything on the property can start until such time as they get permission or access permission to the property.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you, but this is just a real oddity. I mean, I was shocked to hear that they went out there just on the property and started work and had contractors out there. It's not like they, had somebody out there to like survey it or something like that, which would be reasonable and permitted under the contract. But I mean, this was kind of shocking.
Kara, I took photos if you need them for documentation or anything, or if any of the board members wanted to see the progress of what I was out there earlier this afternoon.
Did they have a response? Did they have a response to why they started?
I talked to Riley. And I didn't realize, I wish I'd heard from John Asplin through Kara before I talked to him, but they've been constructing for, it's got to be 2 weeks. John Asplin goes by there on his way home and cuts across there. So he saw it, he just didn't think anything about it, but there was no reason why he should have. He's not that tied in the IDA business, so now that I'm with that information, I'm not quite sure what we can do.
Well,
But-
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
how long have we been waiting for the signatures? Because we could do a stop work order.
signatures.
So we know that they've signed everything. They signed everything, I believe, Thursday afternoon. There was an issue on their end getting the documents sent out. So Friday, they were overnighted to the title company, their entire package, which included our signature pages. Those documents were tracked as of yesterday. They were still out for delivery. They were supposed to arrive Saturday. They didn't come in yet. I haven't heard from the title company today. They actually were shipped to her house because it was a Saturday delivery, because no one wanted to have a delivery on Saturday to the office, though we suggested Monday. So they were shipped for a Saturday delivery and they didn't make it. So I'm assuming that once she gets home from work today and is able to check to see if they're there, she'll update us all on that.
So I just got an email from Riley. He said, I got in touch with the title agent who said the papers were delivered to her home, but she hasn't had a chance to get back to receive them yet. She would confirm receipt as soon as she could this evening. Would be meeting with Kara ASAP to go over everything.
Okay. I mean, we have everything ready on our end to give to the title company for recording. So.
Yeah, how long could it possibly take to get that resolved eventually? Because you're doing that. How long might this take, the process, to finally get this resolved?
Well, the closing is, as long as we have all the signature pages, there's nothing to resolve. It's just, it's done. And she'll go and she'll file everything. She's insured the property. She's insured the lender. She's insured Riley's company. We have our money. I mean, it's just, she's going to go record the documents once she has all the signature pages. I'm holding our original deed is what she needs from us. And she's welcome to come get that. As soon as she is.
Do we have any current liability today?
Well, right now there's insurance in place, naming the IDA. I don't know when they went out there versus when we got insurance. So I'm sure there was a period of time when there wasn't insurance in place. If there was an incident occurred on one of those dates, I mean, we haven't heard that there was any incidences, so I'm hoping that that's not the case. Now, arguably, we have the money. They've considered this closed, though I haven't given them the deed yet. But I will do so now that I know they have all their documents.
So just let me know when you get the documents. We'll go from there. If in fact we don't have the documents, we should probably put a stop work order on them.
Mr. Chairman, can we assume that they have all of their building permits from Washington County and Kingsbury?
That I knew they had. You were there. That I knew they had their building permits.
They're good.
Roselle wouldn't have started without the building permits. Brian?
Well, from what I just heard, it sounds to me like the closing is basically done, as long as everything's in order. And we can't worry about the back. Let's move on. I mean, I just want to have some more, it's not a problem.
Anyone else in comment on that matter? We changed to another subject. Dan, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just curious what the
completion date or whatever. For Scotty for their.
They have a completion date at the end of this year.
Thank you.
Okay. And Dan, as park chair, you might want to join Mike down at the park with the grasshopper.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank
When
you.
is it?
All set on that? Moving on, delineation update, they had a switch where they did the single JD submission for last 4 or 5. I just got an email from, or this morning, I queried the hydrologist where they were at. He said submitted it. They have not any feedback from John Connell, so he assumes it's gone up for to the EPA for approval on the JD. So I will verify with John Connell myself what the status is and see where we are. As far as the other delineation, we still have the balance of the hybrid delineation to submit. I will be getting an update on that hopefully tomorrow or the next day, and I'll let people know. Any questions on that? By the time we get done, we'll have to start delineation again for the next 5 years. Canal Side Energy Park Sewer Water Update. Yeah.
Absolutely. I spoke with Paul DA. He's the senior civil engineer with Lavelle Associates, who are doing the preliminary engineering study, et cetera, for this. He had hoped was supposed to have the proposal to us last week for the engineering report, study, et cetera. But what's his name? Left.
Sean Doty.
Sean Doty, thank you. He left to go elsewhere, and that has put a little bit of a hindrance, crunch, whatever you want to call it in this. But anyway, I talked to him, and hopefully next week he will have that to us. Now, that proposal is for a report to DEC, which is required. It'll go to DEC, they'll look at it. If they accept it, then we could go ahead with final design and construction, et cetera. Now, what that report basically entails is they determined that the Washington County Sewer District plant can accept 100,000 gallons a day of effluent discharge from the canal side of the park. In order to do that, DEC requires that you mitigate 4 times that. With all sanitary sewer systems, generally speaking, is what is known as I&I. That's inflow and infiltration. Inflow is just runoff, whatnot, that goes directly into the sewer. Infiltration is basically what comes in through leaky joints, manholes, pipe, et cetera. So I don't know if you want me to go into all this detail on that, but in order to be able to do that, DEC says, okay, you have to mitigate 4 times that in storm sewer water. Now, 400,000 gallons by storm sewer estimates, whatever you want to call it, wrong, is not a lot. However, you have to find that in the system, and you have to mitigate that, whether that's relining pipe or what have you. So that's what Labella's report will contain, and that will again go to DEC. They'll look at it and they'll say either yay or nay. And, no, we think you're wrong here, whatever. But that's necessary and required, and once that's approved, then we can move forward with more detailed design for a system to get us that capacity from Canal Side Energy Park to the Washington County Sewer District.
So there are just as a matter of information, there are at least 3 other mitigations with the stormwater in place. One, of course, out on Queensberry Avenue with phase 1 and phase 2. That's one area. The second part is there is a mitigation grant being applied for in Hudson Falls, Kingsbury area. They have some problems up there. They also have issues in Fort Edward itself, so.
Yeah.
We may, as part of the sewer project, have to do some mitigation of the stormwater, so. That's part of what they're looking at when they look at the studies, where we get that from, can we find different areas to look at, so. That was something that I attended. I listened to some of the sewer meetings that I'm invited to. And I've been kept abreast of some of the projects they have gotten underway for water mitigation, so. Anyhow, any questions for Dan?
Mr. Chairman, oh, go ahead.
So if that is final, done, what's the next step? Where do we go from there?
Which is filed the report. Yeah, once that's accepted and approved by DEC, said then we can get into detailed design of the conveyance system, piping, et cetera, pump station, whatever, from Canal Side Energy Park to the Washington County treatment plant.
And this will decide what type of industry can be there or how many employees can be there, that type of thing.
In a roundabout way, because you're gonna, it all depends on the industry that's there, what they generate per day for a discharge. Again, based on what their process is, that will determine that. And also, you know, the number of employees to a more of a minor degree, because they're not, the employees aren't gonna add that much to it. It's gonna be basically the process. that you're looking at.
So just to follow up on that, so WL Plastics was gonna employ 85 to 100 people. They recycled all their water. So there wasn't a lot of discharge going to the sewer. But that was gonna be 24/7 operation, so there was another one that's coming up that actually the slaughterhouse would have required a lot more water because they can have to continually wash. And in the slaughterhouse's case, they probably would have had to put in a pre-treatment plant. So in terms of that, and if they put a pre-treatment plant to get rid of these biosolids in there, there is a possibility they get a speedy permit and discharge into the canal. So there are some options out there, but they're complex. We just met with a company last Thursday, which seems to be very promising, who will build their own sewer treatment plant there. And they said, we want to control the sewer of treating the water to what goes out there, because they do recapture some of the elements and reuse them. So, but you know, there are companies like that. So I just meant that, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Dan, I'm going to get a little deeper into the effluent, so to speak. But you said that the sewer has the capacity for 100,000 gallons, but we need a plan for 400,000.
No, we need to mitigate 400,000. We need to take that. You send me 100,000, but somewhere out there, you got to basically remove 400,000 from my system. In other words, I infiltration and inflow, you got to remove 400,000 gallons of that in order for me to give you 100,000 gallons of capacity. Is that?
Yeah, it makes sense, because I was wondering if we do retention ponds or something like that, because it's stormwater, but that's not possible.
Not necessarily. It depends on, there's a couple of things to get deeper into it. One thing is what DEC is not very clear on. There are different, what we call design storms. You may be familiar with this. 25-year, 50-year, 7,500. Those, there are runoff values for those, which are historically gathered, generally remain the same. So whichever one of those DEC tells you to design to will determine, have a big effect on determining where you find that 400,000 gallons. In other words, if they tell you, well, design to a 25-year storm, that's a little more difficult. In other words, the larger in terms of time span, like the 50 years, 7,500, those storms are more, have more runoff, if you will. Just trying to be simplistic here. A little easier to find those, but there again, you got to deal with that amount. So you have to have ways of removing that from your system. In other words, they're saying, okay, we'll let you bring this in, but you got to help us improve this treatment, because when you're treating sewage, it costs money, right? And you don't want to be treating water, just plain water, stormwater runoff. So they want us to remove that from there and improve that, the function of that treatment plant. Basically what it is.
So at the canal side, we already have so much stormwater separation. That's why we have the retention ponds down there, and if you look through some of the pipes, there's a lot of pipes taking the stormwater out, and it goes into those stormwater ponds. So when we put sewer in there, we will be excluding any stormwater from going in there. One of the biggest areas in Fort Edward is right down East Street. The stormwater infiltration there is massive. And, that's one place to catch it. We don't know, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know how it is, but that's one of the things we'll have to plan to look at when we look at this. They do have some stormwater separations going in place with a couple other projects have down there too. The Bill has been working on a couple of those already.
That's what an MS4 is, municipal storm sewer, separate storm sewer system, where you separate stormwater from your sanitary sewer. But, there are a lot of municipalities, older ones around here, where historically you put all of it together, because historically you didn't get the kind of treatment that it gets today, and it didn't cost it, nobody cared. So nowadays, what you can do is take that stormwater that you're putting in and reroute it somewhere else, but that's all money. You have to put in new manhole catch basins, new infrastructure to get that out of the sanitary sewer stream. So
I just happen to know the organization that manages MS4. Regional Planning Board.
So I'm just curious, just one other, if you don't mind. What's the likelihood of this happening? Because there's significant cost doing the mitigation.
likelihood of which happens.
Us getting approved for us to be able to afford 100,000 gallons.
That I don't know. I will say there's a very good likelihood of finding this 400,000 gallons. It sounds like a lot, but again, by stormwater volume, it's really not. So there's a very good likelihood of achieving that. But to your point, the cost, that'll be determined by where we find it. And again, like I said, my point with DEC was they're not telling us right now that you've got to design it or you've got to determine this based on a 25-year event, 50 years, 75. So we need to ferret that out. But yeah, I think there's a very good likelihood of finding that volume, but the cost to mitigate it, that'll be included in the report.
Right, but remember, there's several projects going on for stormwater mitigation. We wouldn't be the only project.
Okay.
So all those would come together to give us give the plant the excess capacity or additional capacity, if I want to say it that way. Okay, Brian?
I want to thank Mr. Bruno because I've been on the board here at the county for 15 years. In 10 minutes, I've learned in more layman's terms what actually goes on in the sewer district than I went in 15 years. So that was a good job. That's part. Thank you. That was very good.
Okay. Anything else on that subject? Project updates, I gave you one about the new company coming in who actually flew in from Minnesota just to see the Canal Side Energy Park. They are talking about bringing a product parallel to the canola oil from Calgary in here down into Fort Edward, where they would potentially put it in silos and distribute it by truck from this area. So that's coming up. And first initial meeting on them. So that's about what we've got at this point. There's another project who wanted to look at the building to store grain in. As soon as they get done seeding and haying, they'll be back on it. They've got a deadline date. TDI is also looking at potentially leasing a part of the park for their construction trailers and their parking trailer. And next door to us, they will be leasing a laydown area for their equipment from WCC, or potentially. So that's why I was talking to Josh about. I sent him an email. I said, I don't care if we have a lease deal. I need to know what we agree on money, because we have to do our famous ABO submission. To tell ABO, we're gonna do this, and this is what the appraisal is, and this is what the cost is, and this is what we're getting back, so we can get the appraisal. That takes 3 months. There's a workaround for it, but like I told Josh in the email, is that let's get it started. I don't care if a lease signed or not, but let's get a number firmed up and we'll go from there. Because there'll be other conditions have to be put in it. The lease amount we have to have to submit to ABO for their non-action, so to speak. So for those people who don't know, we have to submit an appraisal and a lease and just tell them what the appraisal is for it and tell them we're going to lease for. And in most cases, they never respond to it. They did respond to Kara for clarification on one, but that's the first one she's heard of in a long time. So with that, we've also submitted for, God, my head's gone blank. Oh, transfer the road. We had to submit for appraisal. Appraisal is not done yet. We had to find a professional engineer to give a condition of the road to get an appraisal. So hopefully that'll be done this week. So we can hopefully transfer that piece of the road to Fort Edward. That's all I have for projects at this point. Utah policy, I submitted that.
Dave, can I go back to Canal side for just a minute?
Sure.
I'm just curious, I haven't been able to keep up to date on all the different inquiries we have about Canal side. But what is our strategy? And every once in a while I think of, there's a parable, I guess, bird in hand versus toe in the bush. What is our strategy in terms of trying to get businesses into Canal side?
Well, first of all,
and the basis is, I've heard about a couple of short-term kind of rental and leases and the like. And those might help us in the short term, but it's not a long-term play. But right now what's going on, and typically industry across the board, supply chains are a big issue, and especially international supply chains. So this might be an opportunity for something bigger, more long-lasting than some temporary work. So I'm just temporary.
I agree with you. We did hire CBRE. They're in charge of our marketing effort. They have a special group that they turn the property over to, who handles special properties like this. The one thing we've been running up against the wall for from a number of these is the fact we don't have sewer down there. And that's been a big thing that's turned a lot of companies off. The second is that we had some companies look at it for warehousing. It's just too far off the beaten path for them for warehousing. So we've looked at that. We have interest in a couple areas in agricultural, which is good. Hughes Energy. They've disappeared from the face of the earth. I've heard through the grapevine that they are concentrating their efforts in Virginia and Florida. I have no idea what happens in Delaware County, Delaware Green County. I have heard that they have a one-year approval process to go through. Whether they're going through that approval process or not, I don't know. I haven't heard from Hughes Energy since January. I think it was the last of January we had an exchange, but that was the last we've heard. And what I heard from through the proverbial grapevine. So as far as I'm concerned, they're dead. If they come back, they come back as far as they are. And I think that people need to understand that we're in the process of selling property. We're not a regulatory agency. In terms of being a regulatory agency, is that before they can buy a piece of property, they have to go through all their approval processes. That includes town, village, county, DEC, federal, state, and they're the ones that are going to evaluate the regulatory piece of this. And we are in process of doing that. Our job is to sell property, and it's their job to get the approvals. I have had someone contact, not through me, but through other people, is that they wanted to put they were here about 2 years ago and they're coming back. They want to put an option on the property for like $250,000 and tie it for 6 months. And I'm not sure that we want to tie up a piece of property for 6 months until we actually know what their product is and where they are. Because essentially put an option on it, creating a piece of property, you've locked up the property, you can't sell it to anyone. And if they have a non-refundable option on it, then you're pretty well honor bound to stand by that. So when we look at an option like that, we would have to be very careful on what we do and do our own due diligence to find out what they are. Secondarily, WCC still reaches out. They still get input coming in from a number of industries through their resources, because they do have multiple parks that some of the projects don't fit there. So they've been replying leads too. So really is there. Brian?
I'd like to clarify that more of the 30,000 foot level where I think you were asking. So I think it's kind of like having an old house for sale. And you want to put it in the market, but certain things have to be in shape. And I think that's where we're at, is looking at the sewer, we're getting that part ready. And like the taxes have to be paid in order, there's so many things that have to line up here. And I don't think we're trying to just do something. And I think that's where you were looking at, is where is the direction? What is it we're looking for? And how do we get there? But I think we got to build our own infrastructure first and take care of certain things that are a priority to make sure that we don't lose the house before we get it fixed up and sold. And I think that's kind of the path we're on. I don't think we have that bigger picture quite yet, but I think it's developing in front of our eyes as we get each segment done. I don't think this is going to be an instant switch by any means. I think this is going to be ongoing for a few years. But I think you're right. I think there's some great opportunities that are coming our way. And with the price of commodities and everything, I mean, that's kind of good news what Dave just said, because food is going to be a premium in the next 18 or 36 months, more than likely, with what's going on in Ukraine. And something that replaces canola oil or a derivative thereof or something. Those are going to be important things that might be more important to our areas moving on.
So actually, Chuck?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to point out a little bit as a newbie, we do have the opportunity analysis study that was done within the past year or two. And we are following the recommendations of that report, particularly when it comes to infrastructure. So as infrastructure gets improved, then we also work with commercial real estate people. The interesting issue is going to be when we get a sewer number and the investment number, making a decision whether to go or not go. Also, as market conditions dictate interest in the property. So I do think a plan seems to be followed here through the opportunity analysis study. Is that a fair statement?
Actually, I was going there, Chuck.
Okay.
Thank you. You read my mind. Yeah, no, it is. It's pretty well following what they did. And I think that if you go back and refresh our minds on it, what you'll look and see is that they've also targeted, they've recommended industries to go after in terms of that. Some of them are good ones. We'd like to find green energy here. But also it's important that if we look at that property itself, it does carry a fairly hefty assessment level. So whatever's coming in there has to be able to bear those taxes, or we have to find a way to agree the taxes. Something we may want to look into is, should we think about doing that ourselves, even though we don't pay taxes on it, to reduce the assessment. I did have a conversation a long time ago with one of the assessors in Fort Edward, and actually a current one, is they want to see that property productive again. So we shall see what happens. It all depends on the assessor. Assessors change all the time, and each assessor has different way of approaching things. I had questions about a potential project down in Eagle Bridge that I called the assessor, and she said, well, she said, I don't want to see the company get tax poor. And she said, I'll work with you, but again, it's way too early in the project to come up with some number of what the base is going to be because she may not be here. And another assessor may look at it completely differently. So as we get closer to the project, which is developing quite nicely, we had a conference call with a couple. We're looking at tax exempt bonds, as well as all the other suite of portfolio we have. So that's come along nicely. We'll have more information probably within the next week or 2 weeks. So it's a big shot in the arm for Eagle Bridge.
Thank you both. It's always good to have a refresher every once in a while. I do worry about the fact that, like the analogy Brian used about losing the house.
Mhm.
It could cloud some of our judgment, but I do recognize the fact that we do have some obligations.
Understood. All right.
So also remember, it's also an Empire Zone property, which has quite an opportunity too built in. And the second thing I would suggest is we stay out of the assessment portion of it because we are exempt for number one. And the assessment should really be established as it's sold as to what it becomes. It really, the assessment won't have much to do with anything that we're involved with. That should be the burden of the new owner. I think us getting involved in assessments, we're just gonna be going up the wrong alley here. That's only gonna make people undermine what our line of thinking is. And I would just assume we didn't go in that area.
I agree.
So anyhow, any other questions? Did I forget anything?
Good day. Thank
I
you.
probably did. Okay, no. UTEP, I did send the UTEP out to review. Did anyone have any comments on it?
What we put out for review had basically one comment built into it there.
Yeah. Probably more. Every time I read it, I find something new.
About 3 power facilities.
Yeah. I'm going to defer discussion on that because I found some other things we need to take consideration. Like I said, every time I read this and read other documents, we need to marry our policy into the UTEP because there's certain things in the general policy that we moved over. There may be some others that I've been looking at. I haven't had time to talk to Karen. She hasn't had time for me because we've both been very busy. We need to have that working group meeting again, sit down and talk about it and discuss it. TDI update we had. I did miss one thing. Tim, did you have any analysis of the financials?
Sure, I can add some color. We Ally and I decided that it would be better to show a year-over-year comparison, both on the income statement and balance sheet. In the past, you've just been looking at a snapshot of the balance sheet and the income statement year to date. What only comments I have on the balance sheet is, very liquid, good deposits, and no liabilities, so very, very strong equity position. You will see that the land transfer in is the biggest lion's share of the change in the balance sheet from one year over the next, and that's Canal Side Energy Park. But all in all, for comparison, and if there's any questions on the balance sheet, we'd be glad to try to address them now, or we can potentially, or we would have to get back to you with some answers to that. So the balance sheet is presented as of May 31st, 2022, as is the year-to-date profit and loss, for lack of a better term, for not-for-profit. Just a couple quick comments there. June revenues, we do know through Sun Valley and Biscotti, or Buck County, as it's called, there'll be another $111,000 coming in through there, almost 112, or just over $112,000 in revenue. You're looking at operating revenue of $274,000. That does include a one-time grant of $86,000 from National Grid, and that supported your expenses of $156,000. So there was a surplus. But again, if you back out the one-time grant, you would have to actually go back and back out whatever expenses were allocated to that. But we're in good shape in terms of where we were tracking for last year, I believe.
And the expenses came out in 2021.
Some of those expenses
So-
were.
The payment came in, I think it was in January 2022, so cross things, but our expenses were fully paid by, I think it was in October, I think we paid the final bills there
Thank
for the
you that.
USDA grant.
Yeah, I wasn't involved at that point, so thank you. It's good to know that, we're recognizing expenses in the year. Revenues. So, other than that, if there's any questions on the income statement or statement of income and expense, I should say, I'd be glad to try to address it with Ally's assistance.
Greg?
On the under expenses there for the property, sewer, water, taxes, AIP, big difference, a lot less this year than last year. What's the difference?
We have more payments the rest of this year.
Well,
Might-
it was
might be a
January to
sequence.
May 21 of $11,000, and January to May 2022 is 850.
Can you give us the line item you're on?
Under expenses, first set there, 107, airport industrial park. Sewer taxes. So this is on profit loss. previous
Yep.
year comparison. Yep.
I see that. I think we have to have a research on that, and find out what that was.
Yeah, we'll have to get back to you.
There wasn't any special assessment or anything last year, was there, for upgrades or anything out there?
Nope. Nope. And by the way, most of industrial park is gonna come off that. Because we requested a lot of properties we lost down there, we can't develop, they're coming off, but it won't be until they redo the function. So hopefully that'll be completed by next year, so we'll have a reduction, in what we have in sewer and water for the airport industrial park. The one twist was, we had a reverse on canal side. By law, we pay special district taxes. The previous assessor in Port Edward made us totally exempt. By law, we should be paying special district tax, so we'll be paying fire district taxes on that this year. Okay, that'll be the tune of 14,000. Chuck?
Mr. Chairman, another question. Tim, just out of curiosity, in professional services under engineering phase 1 in general, there appears to be a large credit in 2021. That's making it look like a big year-over-year variance. It's negative, rounding negative 43,000. Just curious to, I know you weren't here back then, so.
We can find the answer. If we don't have it today.
Yeah, I'll look
Oh,
into
some
it.
sort of credit. Okay, thank you.
Could be a year thing again, or we got a grant that covered something that we've already paid.
Yeah, but the other thing we had in there is that I think that maybe where delineation was. Delineation to date has cost us somewhere around $48,000. So necessary evil, but this is almost the fact that we didn't do the right delineations over every 5 years. We missed it, so there's a lot of catch up to do. So, I mean, that's over the course of close to 2 years, but that was a big number. I had to look at it and I was a little shocked. But there could have been some other engineering. We can find out what it was.
Great, yeah, we'll respond to any questions.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Tim. We appreciate this. We have no new business. I'm
One
gonna
last thing, I do want to thank you for formatting too, so we can see them. That's perfect. That's good.
Could you please put it in 24 type so I can read?
How did you hear that?
I was just kidding. I can see
I
it.
know. I have to take my glasses off.
Okay, I am going to request an executive session. We talked about a couple items. First is that we need to talk about contract negotiations. And there may also be some personnel matters coming up. So I will, Kara, did I state that correctly?
Yes.
So I will take a motion for the next executive session. Motion by Brian, do I have a second? Second by Craig. Any further discussion? All in favor?